So next off, we have a panel, so I'm going to introduce the panel moderator today. So Corey McClelland is going to moderate our panel. He's the CEO of Qubitekk. He's worked in the quantum energy, healthcare, cybersecurity, and computer science industries with over 30 years of industry experience. And he's going to talk to two of our faculty members this afternoon. So please welcome them.
Thank you. Thank you, I appreciate that. I've got Professor Lorenz and Professor Spiller here, but first I'm going to introduce myself real quick, and then I'll let them introduce themselves. But I want to look back a couple of panels here before where we were talking about IP and competition in quantum. And the quantum industry is relatively small compared to other industries in the world. And to that extent, we need to pull together in places like this, like the Chicago Quantum Summit, other conferences, the quantum, the commercialization issues that will rise. There's a lot of co-opetition that needs to take place so we can grow as an industry. There's a lot more momentum that's starting to pick up that we're seeing anyway. And so it's very important that we all pull together as an industry. The Quantum Economic Development Consortium is a great way to do that, put a plug in for them. We're a founding member, and we've been very delighted with all the different things that QEDC has done, and now especially with their international outreach. I'm Corey McClelland. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer of Qubitekk. Qubitekk is a quantum networking company. We are a category leader in first mover advantage with our quantum network that we've installed at EPB in Chattanooga, Tennessee. They're an electric utility with an amazing quantum vision. They started out by looking at a quantum protected network for the electric grid and have just grown ever since. Our panel today will be talking about quantum networks, and I'd like to reflect on Steph's lesson number 2 from this morning, if you were here. But the computing and the networks are together. And it's all about quantum entanglement, distribution, and the network is the computer. And I think as we talk a little bit more today, that will be drawn out. In Admiral Stavridis' co-authored book called 2034, he talks about a Chinese secret weapon that completely destroys the US Pacific Fleet. And if you read between the lines, that secret weapon was a quantum computer, strong artificial intelligence, and a free space quantum network. If you can just turn a plane off in the sky, why shoot it down? It's an interesting book, an interesting read. But the country that wins the quantum race will dominate the world, both economically and from a national security perspective. So the world will have a quantum chat GPT moment in the not too distant future. So as you guys see the momentum increase, it's great to be in this industry right now. So let me let the panelists introduce themselves. Dr. Lorenz, you want to go first?
Thank you so much. Yes, I'm Gina Lorenz. I'm a professor at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. And my research has been on quantum optics, specifically things like quantum memories, and more recently quantum networks. And I'm really excited to tell you a little bit about a new thing we started at UIUC called the Public Quantum Network. So what this is a real fiber-based link between our lab at the UIUC campus over to a public library, the Urbana Free Library. And we're sending entangled photons through that link, and they're flying out into free space, and the public can actually interact with the photons and choose measurement settings for the photons. And so this is both education and outreach, as well as a real quantum network that we do research on, and we're hoping that we'll get feedback from the public about potential new ideas for how you can use a quantum network, and also learn how best to explain it to the public. I've heard a lot of comments this morning about wishing our grandmothers understood what we did better, or when we go into a quantum class, maybe our background isn't such that we feel comfortable with the ideas that are presented. And so this kind of tries to address that head on. And if you don't mind, go ahead and start the video. This is our launch event on November 4th. We invited the public to come over, and what we did was a version of the Bell test to show there's true entanglement. So that's our lab on campus. This is together with Professor Paul Kwiat, who's also in the audience there. And in the lab, we have an entangled photon pair source. We take one of the photons and send it over to the library. And over there, we introduce people to the concepts of superposition, entanglement, and measurement, and also the philosophical implications of quantum mechanics. We also serve them liquid nitrogen ice cream. We had over 200 people, and so their arms got tired after a while, but we had really good, enthusiastic members of the public who were really eager to learn more about quantum technologies. And a lot of them had heard something about it, but they wanted to understand it. And so the quantum network provides that opportunity to have hands-on interaction with a real quantum technology and to understand the basic principles, which eventually, hopefully, will lead to a stronger workforce in the future. Yeah, and of course, this work was not done in a vacuum. So this is part of ongoing educational efforts throughout the US. For example, the Q12 partnership that includes many people here, many industry partners and academic partners here to bring quantum education to K through 12, as well as various other activities throughout the world just to start to educate people about the technology. There we're seeing the result of the test, and indeed it eventually does go over too. And we are very excited about that, so yeah. Yeah, so that's the public quantum network. And I just want to have a shout out to the team members. And I don't feel bad about embarrassing you. So if you'd please raise your hand, Paul, Emily, all you grad students, I see you up there. Please raise your hands. Yeah, so we're all here. We're happy. Yeah, and we're happy to answer questions. And we also have a coloring book. So hopefully some of you got that. Yeah.
Can't wait to get the coloring book for my grandkids. Looking forward to it. Professor Spiller, do you want to introduce yourself?
Well, I'm not sure I can follow that, but anyway. So I'm Tim Spiller. I'm a professor of quantum information technologies at the University of York in the UK. But I think the reason I'm sitting here is because I'm the director of the Quantum Communications Hub. So that may not mean much to you, so very quick historical account. UK set up a national quantum technologies program in 2014. It contains various components, national lab activities, industry-led projects, which has been a growing feature. But the main academic-led parts of that national program are 4 large hubs, one on computing and simulation, one on communications, the one I lead, one on sensing, and one on imaging. So, and each of the 4 hubs is not just located in one place. Each hub has about 10 university partners, numerous 20, 30 industry partners, national lab involvement, and so on. So each of the 4 has focused on, if you like, one of the quantum technology sectors. And the one that I've been leading is the one on communications. So we started in 2014. We've got a year to go before there's going to be a significant refresh in the UK National Quantum Programme with, we hope, a number of new hubs that will start up. But over the period that we've been working, most of what we've done is focused on QKD because we were told at the very beginning, I guess in contrast to the US, which is kind of science first, we were told it's technology first. So we focused on things that were already up and running and working. So most of what we've done is based on QKD. We've developed short-range free space QKD, if you like, for consumers. It might be in your phone in the future. We've done a lot of fiber networking, trusted node QKD around the UK, and we've got network that extends from Bristol in the west right across to Cambridge and little networks around Bristol and Cambridge, and we've connected up to industry. And then at the very largest scales, we're going to launch a small CubeSat in about a year's time. It might be the beginning of 2025 to do a satellite to ground station demonstration of QKD.
Great, thank you, Tim. I'll start asking a few questions here, and hopefully we'll leave some time at the end for the audience to respond as well. Gina, let's start with you. Why do people want to build quantum networks? Let's start with the real basics.
Yeah. I guess, as most people know, you have kind of the top 4 reasons: communication, computation, metrology, and fundamental tests. But I guess, again, going back to what I've been working on a lot is this public quantum network. We don't know what other future applications there might be, and I feel that building a quantum network is a great research task in and of itself to learn from. Examples of that are, the real world environment. So, to make that link, we had to deal with polarization, mode dispersion, loss, noise. With a really noisy quantum network, there may be tasks that you can do that don't require really high rates, but are interesting nevertheless. And so we're working with quantum information theorists to try to figure out what those problems might be, as well as bringing it out to the public to see they might have interesting use cases, maybe not quantum, but even just physical infrastructure, the infrastructure we're building, there might be some interesting use cases. So, yeah.
That's great. Use cases are high on our list, trying to figure out what the killer app is going to be.
Exactly.
So that's great. Tim, I know this is going to be probably a little UK slant to it, but what do you think the biggest challenges are preventing widespread use of quantum networks?
Yeah, well, let me say, when I talk about the technology, I'll try and be objective, but if I talk about strategy and so on, then you will get probably a UK bias in my perspective from where I am in the UK. I think we've just touched on one. So I'm going to say there are two things I think that's holding stuff back. And one is we could do, if I say it flippantly, we could do with more market pull. So I think we need a greater number of applications. I mean, quantum networking is all about spreading quantum advantage out over distance, And so I think we know some things we can do with distributed entanglement over distance, but I think we could do with more of that, and therefore that will generate market pull on new applications. But I do think there are still technology challenges. I mean, I would say most of what's been done at the minute are very, very impressive laboratory experiments, and some of those have been taken out in the field, but I wouldn't say we've got working deployable technology, and until we have it and it's low swap and so on, and so it can be manufactured and put out everywhere, then I think that is going to be a barrier. So I think over the next few years, I think there's going to be a lot of work to turn some of the very good scientific experiments that have been done to date into actual working technology.
Great, thank you. Yeah, at some point in the future, quantum computers will need to talk to each other and therefore need quantum networks.
Indeed.
But longer distances will take quantum memory and quantum repeaters to get over those distances. Of course, there's satellite communications as well, so that may help with some of the distance challenges. Gina, what do you think are some of the best use cases? I know we've kind of touched on that already, but education, obviously, one, security.
Right, yeah. I mean, like you just said, I think the technology is at the point where we're still figuring out what those use cases are. And in that sense, I think just having quantum networks to play with, so to speak, just having that research around them, I think is really important right now. I guess we've kind of been working in a relatively limited space, even in terms of like the quantum states that we tend to focus on, like Bell states. I mean, we could broaden that out. We could look at different types of entanglement, different types of non-local states on networks, and we might find different use cases from that research. So I do feel that the best use case is still to come, I think.
Well, getting from where the lab is to commercialization is going to be important, and I think all the networks, quantum networks that are being built today are going to help with that. Hopefully it'll be like the ARPANET of the 50s and 60s where they become nodes on the quantum internet of the future. So everything that we're putting into quantum networks today, I think will have an advantage for us in the future. Tim, what sectors do you see as early adopters for quantum networks?
Well, I'd like to, so where we are at the minute, certainly in the UK, is we've developed trusted node QKD. We've shown it can work over significant distance, and it's now got to the point where British Telecom and Toshiba have a working quantum network on trial with commercial customers in the City of London. So we've progressed that far. If we go to what I would call proper quantum networking, where you're then distributing entanglement over distance, you can still do QKD effectively for free with that. So I think if QKD is already being used in trusted node form, then you get a better version of that immediately. So I think the uptake that will have happened on QKD over the next few years, that's one clear area where I think people will pick up on it. I mean, I think also at the minute there aren't very many quantum computers around, and so getting them to talk together over distance, where I suppose if they talk in a coherent way, you get the multiplicative factor in the exponent rather than just out front, so you get a much more powerful machine, or allowing people to access the machine securely and I suppose blindly to the service provider over distance is something else. So I think there'll be those kind of things. And then I think there are some sensing or imaging applications where you clearly get a benefit by having separation of things over a distance. So it's the distance between things rather than the size of the things themselves that counts. So anywhere where that can be used, I think would be a quick win as well.
Great. So the next one, I'd like to get both of your opinions on this one, but we'll start with Gina. What do you think needs to happen for the hardware costs to drop with quantum networks?
Well, of course, there are the high budget items like detectors and dilution refrigerators that, if those costs went down, that would help. But I guess another thing is just tolerance to error. So I mean, if more of the components were more robust and weren't you could do more of a modular approach as was discussed this morning, that would help. Also having a lot of converters. So if you don't have just the right, the perfect quantum source, maybe the wavelength's slightly different if you had a transducer for that, or and so on, or something that adjusts rates. All of that can help to bring down the cost of making custom things for every network. So I think reducing the intolerance to error and also just modular devices would help. Yeah.
Thanks. Tim, any comments on that?
Yeah. So, well, I think the short answer is stick it on a chip. But I think that's a kind of rather flippant way of saying it, because we still don't know yet clearly in terms of memories and so on. I think there are still open questions about what is going to be the best memory, what's the best sort of multi-qubits. Probably ain't going to be one, right? Because ordinary computers have different embodiments of bits dependent upon what they're doing with the information at that time. So I think there will be a range. But I think decisions, things need to improve, and then decisions can be made about what are the best approaches. But then whatever they are, stick them on a chip, because that's the way you'll make them low swap and mass manufacturable, and that's what will drive down the cost.
That's great. And I know there's a number of companies in the United States that are working on that today. Tim, this one's back at you. What's post-quantum cryptography, and how is it different from quantum key distribution? And do you think there's a merger in the future?
Yes, to the last bit. So we'll come to that in a minute. Well, I mean, we heard about, NIST has played a forefront role in the development of new PQC. So post-quantum cryptography is new mathematical cryptography that is at least thought, for good mathematical reasons, to be immune to attack by Shor's algorithm in a way that RSA and elliptic curves are not immune to that attack. So you heard this morning that NIST has run this. I'm not sure I'm allowed to call it a competition, but I will, to come up with new PQC, and that's been reduced down, and we were told today that they've basically come down to 3 and issued at least the way forward with those 3 PQC approaches. I think they're still going to be open for new developments of that mathematical crypto in the end, and it's I think it was it the guy from IBM who said, as well as having nice crypto, you've got to make sure that it's implemented properly, because quite a lot of security problems are not down to bad crypto or bad whatever. They're down to either people not following protocols or a very poor implementation that leaks information when it shouldn't. So you've got to make sure you get all that right. But in principle, you've got new mathematical crypto coming along that is thought to be immune to Shor's algorithm. Will there be other quantum attacks in the future? So I think there is an open question there. There is no security proof, as far as I understand it, for these new algorithms. And that's the contrast with QKD, which is physical security based on transmitting quantum stuff around. And because of the irreversibility of quantum measurement, you have this disturbance that has to be introduced when quantum things are measured. So there is a detectable way to see that eavesdropping has occurred. So they're two rather different things. One is new mathematical crypto. One is a whole new hardware, physical security. I think the two together are the way to go. I mean, one point about QKD is that it needs a separate authentication mechanism. I mean, it should really have been called quantum key expansion, not quantum key distribution, but that name never stuck. So you have to authenticate somehow. And so there is a potential to combine PQC and QKD together. And I think there is a lot of merit in that. And I think it's unfortunate that quite a few years ago, it was almost portrayed that you have to pick between the two. You should be choosing one or the other. And I just think that's wrong. And I think we've had to play catch up on that because it was portrayed in the popular scientific press. It's one or the other. And I think that's wrong. So I think in the end, we will see a merger of the two, and that will be the best way forward.
I like that idea of a hybrid solution coming together. Gina, the lack of standards, do you think that's harmful or helpful for growing the quantum networking ecosystem?
Yeah, I mean, standards are really important. I think in some cases, standards, it might be the time to start thinking about them, maybe in the more abstract layers of a quantum network in the stack. We could start to build standards around user interaction, about kind of, without regard to the specific hardware, the protocols that control the hardware. But then at the hardware level, I think we're still at the stage of just figuring out what works. And for example, do we always need to send a classical signal ahead of our quantum signal? That will determine what wavelengths we might want to use. And so a lot of that just requires real-world quantum networks that you do the research on, you figure out this is what works, and then start to build standards once it becomes clear. So I think it's both. Some parts may be ready and others we still need to do some work.
I could comment on that.
Please.
Well, yeah. So, well, I think QKD is an example because the technology has existed, certainly in prepare and measure type QKD, for quite a long time. So ETSI, the European Telecom Standards Body, has had, I think, for about 10 years or so, a specific working group on standards for QKD. And I think they could do that because the technology was known and it was, it's known what sort of transmitters and receivers that you have. And so I think that's one example where they have put standards into place already, but that's because the technology was relatively mature. And possibly you can now do the same for random number generators and things, but I would agree, where the hardware is not really settled yet, then you can't really start putting in place standards, and I think that would be damaging to do that. But where you've settled on the hardware, I think standards are then helpful because you don't want incompatibilities here, there, and everywhere. If you're going to do something large-scale networking, then stuff has got to work with other stuff that comes from different companies and so on. So I think that's very important. But the final thing I'll say is that standards, for me, apply to the kind of technology in the hardware and software and protocols, whereas there's also an alternative thing that's being discussed in the UK at the minute, and that's regulation. Should people be stepping in and regulating? But regulation is much more about the application and the use of it rather than the technology itself. So I think those two things need to be kept apart, and I think they both have a role to play. Standards you can start putting in place when you know what hardware you're going to use. Regulations are much more interesting and open question that we're just thinking about in the UK now.
That's great, thank you. You're both professors in your respective institutions. What are the skill gaps that you see today in the quantum industry. Gina, you want to start?
I don't know that I see major skill gaps, but I can imagine the skill gaps, trying to scale everything up. So, we're facing engineering problems, just trying to build a few nodes of our network. And having people with the skills to come in and both with the knowledge of what has worked for classical networks, but also the flexibility to learn about what we need that's a little bit different for quantum networks. That's a skill set that maybe isn't really out there for a lot of people. So I think that's something that we're going to see more and more of as we try to scale up quantum networks.
Thanks. I have an industry perspective, but Tim, I'll let you go next.
Okay, so I'm not so much sure it's a skill gap as a volume of people gap. So, I mean, I think the skills mature, within, the research groups that develop new stuff. Those skills are developed with a small number of people. But at the minute, certainly in the UK, I think we're short of PhD students. We're short of early career postdoctoral researchers. So we do need more of them. And in the PhD case, obviously you go through training and that there. So I think there's a significant demand in the UK for those. And I can kind of give you an anecdote, and I think someone mentioned this earlier this morning as well, in that at the minute it's really hard to hire postdoctoral people because the startup situation is very buoyant and they can afford to pay better than universities can. And so we keep losing PDRAs to startups in the UK. Now, from the UK national programme perspective, that's a success. We've transferred our skills into industry. That's great, except we've now got a hole in a university group that needs to be filled. So I think we're short of people rather than short of the actual skill.
Right. And I think the industry is finding that as well. If you look at the quantum job postings, they're very long, and I think everybody in the industry is looking for highly skilled people in the quantum area. So it kind of reflects what you were just saying from the...
And if I may just add
Please.
to mine, I just want to bring up ethics. That was also mentioned earlier today. The ethics around quantum technology. I think we need people with that level of understanding of the technology and also that background, also education. What we're trying to do with this public quantum network required us to figure out how to explain things really well, and we relied on the experts near us, but I feel like we need more such people, and in many cases it's going to be us. It's going to be the researchers who understand it, who have to figure out how to explain it, and kind of pooling that resource together and learning how to educate, I think, is really important too. Yeah.
I think your coloring book is really going to help me.
Can I chip one more thing in? Because our experience is that I think there's maybe a bit of a communication gap, because we have tried to hire people to come in and do fiber networking and that. And we've said, join us if you're an optical engineer. Don't worry if you don't know any quantum. We can teach you that bit. But there seems to be a kind of threshold that ordinary optical engineering folk, who I'm sure could come in and do a very good job setting up quantum fiber network stuff, there seems to be this, because I've got no training in quantum, I shouldn't go for it. And so maybe we're not we try and advertise in what we think are the right places, which are not just in the quantum arena, but wider. But it hasn't been as successful as we would have liked. And I'm not quite sure why.
Yeah, I feel like that's a great example of why we need to start them young.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Right. Well, we are just have a minute or two left. So do we have any questions from the audience?
I was wondering if you could comment on the use case for quantum key distribution from space rather than from, example, airplanes or something like that, as a means of creating those entangled photons.
That's great. So that was my last question that we ran out of time for. That was perfect. Who wants to take that one? Tim, you want to start with that?
Yeah, well, at the minute, satellites can only function as trusted nodes because we don't have memories, and you know, what would you like to do in the future? Have an entangled source, send one photon down, store the other one in a memory, fly around a bit and send it down somewhere else. So you can see that there is potential for that kind of quantum networking in the future. And people have already been talking about networks of satellites where you actually network them together in a quantum way. I mean, I think that's a long way into the future, but I think there is significant merit in the satellite approach, because they do go around if you put them in the right orbit. And so you can see that you could quantum network between different places in the world on a relatively short timescale. The bit rate may not be great, but you know, that would be a start even with one satellite. So I do think that needs, you know, that is a good way to go, and it needs further investment. I think the only downer on it is that the bigger, so, you know, the satellite we're going to launch is this big, and it's taken us 5 years to deal with that, from planning to getting it up there. You want a satellite that's bigger, then it's at least 10 years, if not more, and you can put 1 or 2 more zeros on the end of the price, I think. So it's not cheap, and it takes a long time. But I think it's essential that we keep that effort going, because we want to have the stuff ready in 10 years' time, so we can then utilize it when we have the technologies to put up there.
All right, we are out of time. Thank you. I'd like to thank our panelists. Thank you both very much.
That went rather
All right.
quick.
Thanks a lot, Corey, Tim, and Gina. So it is my great pleasure to introduce Rashid Bashir to give our closing remarks today. Rashid is the Dean of the Granger College of Engineering at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. Even though he comes to us from bioengineering and was integral in the founding of the Carle Illinois College of Medicine, the first engineering-based college of medicine in the world, he's also been a great supporter of quantum research and engineering at Illinois. So thanks.
Thank you. All right, good afternoon. Good afternoon. All right, I know as you are walking out of here, just got to get back energized. So I'm just going to hold you for a few minutes before the reception. I don't know if there's wine there or not. Maybe there is. There is. So all right, let's keep you. So thank you all for attending this workshop. I'll just take a couple of minutes to just make some brief remarks. First of all, I want to thank the CQE leadership and all of the partners, and David and Kate and everybody else on the organizing committee that helped organize this day today. I know we have also a very exciting day tomorrow. I hope you found it as fascinating and exciting as I did, thinking about and talking about all of these topics that really are so important. I also want to communicate my heartiest congratulations and greetings from Chancellor Robert Jones and Vice Chancellor for Research and Innovation, Susan Martinez from UIUC. So as you can see, the state of quantum in Illinois is very bright and certainly fully in full entanglement, right? There are many, many exciting possibilities and many dimensions to what you heard today on this uncharted frontier. The Chicago Quantum Exchange, with its founding partners, University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, U Chicago, Argonne, Fermi, Northwestern, Wisconsin, all our partners in the region. I think we have such a great opportunity here to continue to really collaborate very closely and advance the frontiers of science, engineering, and technology in quantum computing, quantum communications, and quantum sensing. Our partnership in Duality, which is the nation's first quantum startup accelerator, I'm sure you heard about that through the day. Many of the companies are here. It also positions us at the forefront of entrepreneurship in quantum. This leadership is recognized by not only the currently federally funded national centers across our institutions, but also the recently announced first phase of the EDA Tech Hub. Yay, very excited. And also the closed race. We're keeping our fingers crossed, right, on the NSF Regional Innovation Engine proposals that we should hear shortly. So very excited about all those things. I can tell you from UIUC's perspective, we actually have a center on our campus called IQuest, the Illinois Quantum Information Science and Technology Center, which is really our portal also to this collaboration. From this, I mean, I can tell you this partnership is really important to us, the Chicago Quantum Exchange. IQuest is led by Brian DeMarco, who is here somewhere, I think in the audience, and many of the faculty are here. The state of IQuest is very strong, so we need to stay strong in Urbana to be able to really strongly collaborate in the CQE. We have over 65 faculty that are working in the QIS domain, including faculty from physics, of course, across engineering, CS, math, chemistry, and even philosophy. You heard from Gina Lorenz earlier, and Gina and Paul Kuya just unveiled the first publicly accessible quantum network at the Urbana Free Library just this past weekend. And Emily Edwards, who I know is also here with Diana Franklin from Chicago, they co-lead the National Q through 12 Education Partnership, which expands access to K through 12, I like the Q through 12 better, quantum learning tools, and inspires the next generation of quantum leaders. So just a quick, a couple of stats. So we're UIUC is the flagship land-grant institution of the state with a commitment to research, education, and public engagement. In the Granger College of Engineering, which I have the honor to represent here, we now have about 11,000 degree-seeking students and about 6,000 graduate students, about 600 faculty. And the reason for that is just to tell the companies that are here that in terms of workforce, we have lots of engineers and computer scientists in the state that we produce, especially collectively. If you count all the ones in the state, we might be one of the largest. But I can tell you from our college, we have the largest number of computer science, computer engineering, and electrical engineering graduates in the country. And Chicago is really critically important to Urbana-Champaign as well. We, from UIUC and the Granger College of Engineering, we are really excited to have our strategic high-impact presence in Chicago on our facilities at 200 South Wacker at the Discovery Partners Institute. We have now been offering what we call the Engineering City Scholars Program. We're also now offering our Masters of Computer Science in person. And then the idea is to also connect those students that are here, bring them here to Chicago, build affinity, put them in companies for internships, and hopefully get jobs and stay in the state. We're also planning to expand by bringing in 2 additional master's degrees to Chicago to continue to grow our strategic partnership and leadership in AI and computing from Urbana to Chicago. We're also collaborating with UChicago on the New Ventures program at Polsky. Really excited about that, where engineering students from Urbana collaborate with business students from Booth on growing the entrepreneurial ecosystem. And of course, the critical pillar of our presence in Chicago will be the CQE headquarters on the UChicago campus. We are really excited about that. $175 million was provided by the state of Illinois, thanks to Governor Pritzker, to UChicago and UIUC to build that building. And we from UIUC are really excited, are excited to, when that happens, to be located here on UChicago campus when that building is realized, to collaborate even more deeply across this enterprise. So we're just also really delighted to work together with Chicago, Northwestern, P33, and Innovate Illinois, just this last week to talk with Senator Duckworth about quantum activities in the region and future opportunities. And I think that's really the message here of all of this, is that there's really great alignment across the state and all of our partners to work together and collaborate and really grow this collective innovation capacity. And you see this happening across quantum, also across biotechnology, medicine, and in microelectronics, where there exist great opportunities in silicon to quantum, silicon and quantum. And I think there's no better place in the country to really advance the mission of the NSTC and the chips as well, by envisioning what's beyond silicon, not just bring manufacturing back to the US, but to leapfrog today's technology to invent what is beyond silicon as well. And that's exactly what you're hearing today. So this is really a very unique moment in time, I think, for all of us to come together and to make this great impact. So at the end, let me just say, I think we strongly believe, as the saying goes, that if you want to go fast, you go alone, but if you want to go farther, you go together. And I think that's what I want to leave you with. That's what you see at play here at Illinois. So we'll keep at it and continue to make the state of Illinois in this region, really, and Chicago Quantum Exchange, really the leader in quantum and other advanced technologies. So thank you so much. Thank you for a great day, and please enjoy the reception.